Rich people of Reddit who married someone significantly poorer, what surprised you about their previous way of life? Making financial decisions based around the 3-paycheck month. If you're paid every 2 weeks, most months you get 2 paychecks, and all of your monthly bills and budgeting is based on those 2 paychecks. But twice a year there are 3 paydays in a month, and that's when you can actually solve problems. That's when you can get the car registered, or fix the dryer, or get the cat spayed. The other 10 months you're doing maintenance and trying to scrape by. 3 paycheck months you can actually try to fix problems. More of a funny incident, but I was the poor one. My husband, at the time still boyfriend, took me out to a very nice restaurant. Waiter asked if I want pepper on my Caesar salad that was just made tableside. I said sure, and he goes about it. Thing is, I didn't know you had to say stop. My husband slowly realizes this, but decides to see it play out. He did eventually say that I need to say stop. I just thought a Caesar was had this way, as it was my first time even eating a salad that wasn't just iceberg and ranch dressing. It still tasted fine, just a little bit too much pepper, haha. When the family had people over for dinner, if they ended the prayer before the meal with F.H.B. Amen, it was a signal to let the children know that they don't have enough food for everyone, so take smaller servings and let the guests get a regular serving. FHB equals family, hold back. They were always generous to their friends and didn't let their lack of funds embarrass themselves when doing so. Honestly, food insecurity. When we were first married, she would get visibly uneasy if the food in the house was running low. She never overate or anything, she was just always concerned about it. A lot of times when she was younger, she went hungry. On the humorous side though, she hates camping. Her answer is always the same: I camped because it was fun. She camped because they couldn't afford hotels. For me, my love of camping started from growing up poor. The only family vacations my single mom and brother and I had were family reunion events several states away. It involved long road trips in a shitty car with no AC, but we got to camp in tents and get a break from reality. We also ate a lot better over a campfire than me making hamburger helper for my brother while my mom went to bed early. She worked hard to support us and battled with depression untreated for years until she could afford medication. Those trips were good for all of us. She and her mother lived with her grandfather to not be homeless because her grandfather owned a house. She was putting community college payments on her credit card and building debt with it. I paid off her credit cards when we were dating and she cried from me being so nice. It was only like $1,300. I bought a condo, then we got married, then we bought a house. I never really considered myself rich until I started dating her and learned that a trip to Wendy's was a treat. I grew up middle class, and we are currently middle class. Heh? I am on the other side as I married a girl from a rich family, although we both earn the same and I tend to worry about money/savings/future. Through the years I have realized that she worries less about it and still saves more and spends less than me. I feel like coming from a lower middle class family makes me think about saving more, but at the same time I spend money on things as I could not have them all before I got my own job. I am not well off, but my stepfather is. I was raised by a single mom who spent money on everything and bills were always behind. She just couldn't manage her money at all. In her 50s she met and married a multi-millionaire. We are in middle America, so that goes further than maybe in a lot of areas. They have given themselves $10,000 a month budget to live on, living on interest. Own their home. Anyway, once my mom met him and they got all her finance situated and paid off, she won't spend a penny. He spends like it is going out of style. He has actually begged me to take her shopping to get clothes and accessories. She won't do it. She spent more when she was a single mom with nothing. It makes no sense to me. At least buy a new outfit. She is hell-bent to not use a penny of his money. They barely even have any groceries. If they have anything, it is because he buys it for them. She is a retired nurse that gets a retirement and SS, but she won't spend anything. She lives poorer now than any other time in her life. I didn't marry this woman, but when we started dating, she always wanted to chill at my place, never hers. Which was fine. But she gained 35 pounds in just like a few months of dating. She was 100 pounds when we started dating, not that it was a bad thing. 1. I am a chubby man, and 2. I was just glad she wasn't pregnant. Anyway, turns out her family couldn't afford dinner sometimes. So suddenly she had a place to eat every night and gorged herself. I fell in love with my uni best friend who really didn't have any money. When I got a job, for my birthday I decided to plan a holiday and offered to bring him along. It didn't even occur to me that this was his first ever holiday he'd ever taken. His family could never afford it growing up, and he'd never really thought to do it as an adult. Edit, rip in box. Thank you all for the love and support. I really feel this one. My family did maybe 2 vacation type trips in 18 years of growing up, and both of those were to places relatively close by, few hours of driving. If it wasn't for a couple of school-sponsored trips, I probably would have never left my region of the US until I was an adult, and I still haven't left the country. I remember in college, there was a school-sponsored trip for a class I was taking that involved air travel. The look on another student's face when I told him I'd never flown before was absolutely priceless. Now, as an adult with a middle-class white-collar job, it still boggles my mind to listen to co-workers talk about all the trips and cruises they take and talk about flying to Disneyland for just a weekend getaway. I can't get myself into the mindset of someone who can actually afford to travel now, because it just hasn't been a part of my life at all. My partner and I are both poor, but different kinds of poor. She's never been homeless or not had enough to eat, while I have. She's extremely frugal and hates buying anything we don't need. I feel a desperate need to stock up if we have any extra money, and it's a fight for me not to fill our house with canned and dry goods in case we don't have enough money to buy food next month for some reason. It makes no sense, but my instinct is to hoard food because there just was never enough of it around growing up. I'm from an upper middle class American family and my husband is from a poor SE Asian family. It is hard for me to wrap my head around how poor they really were when he was growing up. He told me about eating only rice with sugar for meals because they couldn't afford meat. They were probably living off less than 50 cents per day for a family of 5 at times. I'm not rich at all, but my husband came from a very poor Mexican village. He told me he used to shower outside, because there was no in-house plumbing, and use leaves as toilet paper. I mean, there's poor, and there's my husband's previous life poor. He's been living in the US for 12 years now, but when we first met it was so interesting seeing life through his childlike eyes. Going to the cinema was a huge event for him. Heating food up in a microwave was a totally foreign concept. And staying at fancy hotels when we went on vacation was like whoa. I still see him surprised by things now and then, and it just reminds me how much I take my middle status class for granted. Mexican here, you'd be surprised how common that really is. In Tantuca there is a hill called Hollywood where there is no plumbing and no government help. There are women who make tamales and other large numbered meals for every kid in the neighborhood because their parents can't feed them, and we don't abandon our own. Also, it's very common to be shocked by things like fancy hotels because ours are nice, sure, but there is rich gringo nice, and it always appalls me on the TV. Mexican here as well. When I first visited an American house I imagined that it was a rich people house. Now after living here for a while I see that it was just your average middle class house, but compared to how we lived in Mexico, 5 people in a bedroom because that's the only place we had AC, seeing a house with Centra AC seemed like luxurious living to me. One of my exes could pull in a lot of money, easily twice or thrice what I could. He was so incredibly bad at saving this money. Down to, say, setting himself up as a company to avoid paying higher rate of tax, but then paying a large amount each month to an accounting company to handle his taxes, which he'd do himself anyway because he didn't trust them to get it right. He'd pay for taxis from one end of the city to another or hire cars rather than use public transport. Flights cancelled, book new ones, never bother to claim back on insurance. buy a sports car, wreck it, sell it for scrap. He'd work contracts and then take time off to work on his own startup, but spend every weekend just going out and buying drugs and booze. I thought it was really fun and wild at first, haha, money really means nothing to you, but when we became a long-term couple I started feeling like his mother. Man, will you not just fill out the insurance paperwork? Credit cards were avoided. For me growing up, we were encouraged to get a credit card in our name and use it as much as possible in order to build credit. There was always money to pay it off each month, so it made sense to 1, build credit and 2, collect airline miles or whatever the reward was back in the day. When we got together, she always used cash or a debit card. She had a credit card for emergencies and avoided using it otherwise. It took a long time to get her over her aversion/skepticism. We were fortunate to have 2 good-paying jobs, though it also taught me a healthy appreciation for what it means to have a financial cushion. I dated a 1%er while I was in college. I met her at a bar. We broke up because she did not understand that I couldn't see her every day/whenever she wanted. I had a typical schedule of a college student, daily classes and an internship as well as club obligations. While her schedule was, Soul Cycle in the morning, yoga in the day, some random cooking class/mixed with whatever she wanted to do. Her family dynamics were such that so she literally did not have to work at all, ever in her life. She did not understand that I couldn't just see her randomly on a weekday when I had classes and an internship I had to attend during the daytime. Which is why she broke up with me, because I didn't make it a priority to see her every day. I can answer this one. I did not grow up rich by any means, but I would say my family was upper middle class. My husband was born in Nicaragua and eventually moved to Texas, where his mother barely scraped by supporting him and his brother. Some of the things that surprised me. He never eats snacks. Ever. They didn't have food in their kitchen and he would go hungry sometimes. He said once they had an egg in the kitchen and he scrambled it and split it with his brother while his mom hungrily looked on. Now as an adult he doesn't understand snacking. If we eat a banana he thinks that is a next meal. He is very impressed with smaller things in life. He had one toy as a kid, truck, and now, anything I get him he thinks is the most amazing thing in the world. He saves everything. He is the hardest worker I know. He never wants to be where he was. He is the most grateful, optimistic person I know. We've been having some problems, family drama, trying to sell our house, work stuff etc. He is not afflicted by any of it. He is cool as a cucumber. He always says, "Did you eat today? Do you have a place to sleep? Does someone love you? Then you are better than most people." I dearly love him. He makes me see the world in a different, better way. My experience is from the opposite perspective. I was the poor one. It absolutely floored me how my wife acts when something broke, like a car, appliances, clothes, etc. As a child living below the poverty line, replacing a tire or other necessities was a disaster, requiring tricky trade-offs in the budget or just plain acceptance of just how boned you were. When my wife's phone broke, I went into full panic mode while she shrugged and said, "We can just a new one this afternoon." And then we did. Edit. Wow, I have received a lot of responses on this. By far my most upvoted comment. You guys made my day, thank you. I have seen a few repair it comments. Like many of you, I am also a Picasso/McGever of the duct tape and trash bag world. This skill helped me break into IT. Sadly, the phone was beyond repair. Trust me, if I could have fixed it, I would have. And thank you for the silver. Last edit, y'all are giving me too many medals. I am very flattered, but this is going to spoil me. I'm from the poorer family, not super poor, but my in-laws have a stupid amount of money, so by comparison I'm very poor, but I think I can answer for her. We have 2 young kids, and my wife was shocked when I said we should look for clothes and toys for them at local flea markets and garage sales. The idea never occurred to her that we could save money by getting some gently used items. She had never even been to a garage sale in her life. She has grown to love them and now questions whether it is worth it to buy any item new or not before running to Amazon or a store. Her parents think it's disgusting we make our kids wear clothes that another child had before, but they don't pay my bills. I came from a relatively wealthy family, new money, my dad started his own business and grew up poor, and my wife came from a lower income blue-collar family. We got married out of college and neither made much money in the beginning. My biggest surprise was how she wanted to spend money. She was shocked when my mom bought her $100+ pair of jeans for a birthday. She couldn't wrap her mind around spending that much on jeans. But she wanted a motorcycle, for me, which I don't ride in the first place. And then a new furniture set. And then a new bed. And then a new car. She wasn't concerned about savings or retirement. And she never wanted my parents' money for any of it. We are both way too proud of that. It took a long time for her to come around to having an emergency savings account, focusing on debt and not needing the other shit. She eventually realized that her parents wouldn't be in such a terrible situation because their spending habits are horrible. She still has it come out sometimes though. We recently paid off my car and she immediately thought I should get a new car. It doesn't directly relate to the amount of money they had, I don't think, but their place was always filthy. I mean, dog shit everywhere. My so lived with his mom sometimes, but would rotate between her and his father and both places were this way. Dishes piled up, floors were grimy, the places stunk of dog pee and cigarette smoke. One time, I used the bathroom at one of his parents' places, and had to spread my feet while sitting on the toilet to avoid stepping in period blood. I mean, it was so disgusting. My so was baffled when, after we first got married and moved in with each other, every day he would come home to a, generally, I'm not perfect, spotless home. Now, on the flip side, I once dated a guy whose stepfather was a lawyer, so they lived a lavish lifestyle. The only thing that he was surprised about when it came to my lifestyle, was that I did not eat pizza with knife, fork, and a glass of wine. Lol. My family is far from rich, but I grew up closer to the upper middle class realm and was making 3x as much as my now husband when we met. He grew up extremely poor, and his family is still living that way. One big difference is how he's surprised that my parents pick up the check when we go out to celebrate a birthday or a graduation, and that my parents ask him to pick whatever restaurant he wants. Outside of the ritziest steakhouse in town, they don't care. To his family, a big meal out is going to McDonald's and not eating off the dollar menu. I'm serious. My wife earned many times more than I did when I was a high school teacher back when we were dating. She sometimes would drive my 10-year-old Primer black, stick-shift Honda Civic that my cousin lent me until I could buy another car. She was blown away how aggressively mean people are to you when you drive an ugly old car. When she got out of the car, the spell lifted. I got a lot of respect from her for that. She seemed to think I was a saint for not turning sour over it. I was constantly getting pulled over by cops and let go, targeted by road rage, and also pedestrians felt too comfortable engaging with me. I drive a newer Honda, 1 year old, now, and it is so different. I drive the same but probably drive a bit more aggressively now that I can't hear the wind roaring by when I'm going over 40 miles per hour. I haven't been pulled over and haven't had a negative interaction on the road in a long time. Also, my wife now enjoys trading cars with me. I'm from the poor family. For my first car purchase, I went to a dealership and picked out a Honda Civic, and they proceeded to slap on something like a 10% finance rate on that sucker. I saw nothing wrong with it. I was young, I had no idea the typical finance rates, and I had brought my parents with me. Surely they would have raised a red flag if it had been a bad deal? No, I quickly realized later they had absolutely no financial literacy. One of the reasons we were poor, but certainly not the only one. Also, I could afford the monthly payments, and that's what really matters, right? I was about a year into it before I did some research, wised up, and paid that thing off ASAP. Drove it for nearly 10 years, ended up being a great car, but I can absolutely understand why people end up in these terrible underwater loans with rates that make your head spin. That was me. And I consider myself a smart person, but financial literacy is a whole separate thing from being smart. A lot of people have this idea that if you're rich, you're automatically smart, and if you make poor financial decisions, you're dumb. Well, both my husband and I make six figures now, and I like pulling out this little nugget of info when people start cracking on people making bad decisions and they deserve to be miserable, etc. I was like, that was me once. Ironically, once I started making money, I had the ability to take the time to do research and make better decisions, because things weren't done at the last second emergency.